Hey there, I'm Dr. Norris Goldberg, and I'm the owner of Koru Chiropractic.
And I'm Dr. Tom Groover and the owner of Boulder Chiropractic Clinic. And I'm really lucky to find this man. We were doing an extensive search for someone who has x ray equipment that's set up to do the NUCCA or NUCCA x rays. So, this is a very specific procedure that requires very specific x-ray equipment and installation and alignment, and it's very hard to find. And Norris is, well, you've been out of school 2 years now, a little more?
Actually, now almost 4 years.
4 years,
Yeah.
okay. So 4 years, and he's been in practice literally 5 minutes from my house, and I didn't know it all this time. And I was in practice down in Boulder, Colorado, and we're in Louisville, Colorado, right now in Norris's office. And the backstory about me is that I was in a practice down there in a facility for 21 years and was always struggling with building maintenance problems with the gutters, the flooding from both sides of my clinic, from the front, from the ceiling. And this last time, it was all happening at one time, and we had a lot of water damage. But then black mold was a big problem. Like, we had it starting to show on the outside of one of my walls, and so we had it inspected, and it was confirmed, and then we had it mitigated, which meant tearing out the entire front section of my office.
Wow.
And during that time, of course, we were under a lot of distress from a survival point of view for the clinic. It turns out at the end of it all, the landlord was not willing to make the improvements or basically do the maintenance that would be required to maintain the structural integrity of the building. And so we had to leave.
Wow.
Because we have mold injured patients that come into our office.
Right.
And that was for their sake. But if you think about it from a business standpoint, you don't want to have mold in your office.
Yeah, not a good
For
problem.
yourself and your family sake.
Yeah.
And you don't want to have it for your patients.
Yeah.
And for your future patients. And from a healthcare point of view, there is this pledge that we take to do no harm.
Right.
So I was in this moral dilemma because I had my x-ray equipment all set up and certified by the NUCCA organization. I'm a level 2 certified, at level 2 of NUCCA certification, which means my equipment is all set up according to very strict standards, and my patient positioning and my x-ray imaging and the quality of my images, the analysis that I do is all set up, ready to go, and had been like that for years. And then everything is shut down. And when we came in there, we did a whole build out, had to lead the walls like you did.
Yep.
We had to put a lead window so you could see inside the room while you're taking the x-ray. You have to stand behind a screen or a leaded wall, and because you just don't want to have daily exposure to x-ray. And we had to pull in 100 amps of electricity into our facility. I don't know, did you have to pull in new electricity into your place?
They did bring a circuit panel over, and I think it's 220.
Yeah, so we brought in 100 amps, which was an enormous cable that ran through a conduit. We had to pull it through with a grease on it and the whole thing. It was crazy. Well, in today's value market, that whole installation would be worth about $60,000.
Yeah.
And so we weren't willing to start over again because, I'm ready to pass on what I know to someone else. And so Norris showed up.
Yeah. Good timing, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's worth also recognizing how few NUCCA doctors there are in the country, because it is such a high level and standard of care, and there's a good reason for that, right? Because it is so hard to practice. It's not the cheapest way to practice, it's not the easiest way to practice, but we probably both agree it probably gets us some of the best results in chiropractic care, right?
Yeah, I'm a little biased now from 21 years of clinical practice, but can say that our results are unmatched anywhere.
That's lovely to hear.
I can confidently say that. And
Absolutely.
one of the exciting parts of our practice now is the medical recognition of the craniocervical junction disorders.
Exactly.
And that's all pretty much related to the misalignment of the upper cervical spine.
Exactly.
The area, where the head joins the neck.
Right.
It's critically important.
And that's really what we're here today to do, is to show how we're going to align our x-ray unit so that we're getting the most accurate films on our patients, because these misalignments, a couple millimeters in one direction or other, can be the difference between life or death, right? And so that's why we need to be so precise. We're not just slapping the x-ray against the wall and shooting pictures, right?
Yeah, now, let's not saying that there's bad things about normal x-ray installations. They're fine for what they're used for. But in our situation, we're doing biomechanical analysis, which is like we have to measure the degrees of misalignment of different structures.
Yep.
And the inches and the fractions of an inch and all sorts of factors like that. Well, it's a different purpose. So normal x-ray installation is that you set up this film holder back here on the other side of Norris, Dr. Goldberg, and then you set up the tube stand on a track, and you point them, and there's a light that shines from the box on the front of the tube called a collimator, and you want to just put that field right in the middle of the x-ray collector. In this case, it's digital, so there's a sensor and not film, and that's enough, pretty much.
Sweet.
And in our case, what we're doing now is Norris was very fortunate to get a frame system. It's an L frame. If you look at the footprint on the wall, on the floor, you'll see in a moment that it's L-shaped, and what it does is it creates a self-sufficient cage for all of the components of the x-ray machine, so that when you line it up, everything stays in relation to everything else. No matter what happens to the settling of the floor, if there's seismic activity,
Right.
It doesn't matter. Those relationships will remain the same. Now, you may lose the leveling of your cage, so to speak, and in that case, you can always just shim it back into level, and you're good to go. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Is we have already done a little bit of pre-inspection of this equipment, and we want to show you kind of what we're up against and what we're going to accomplish at the end. So let's get started. So now, when you look at this x-ray equipment, what you'll notice is that it's installed within a frame. So I'm going to just kind of give you an idea here. You can see across the top here, you can see the elements of the frame, these horizontal pieces, and then you can see how it comes down on the outside here, and there's the leaded window I was telling you about. And then following it down to the floor, you can see that there's a footprint. See that L shape right there? That's what I'm talking about. Now, over here, you'll see that on top of this long bracket or brace on the frame is a silver colored thing. That's the track. And then on the track is the mast, which is this vertical component. And then right here is the tube, which attaches on an arm, and it attaches on the arm, which attaches to the column, the vertical element, right? And then over here, what we have is called a bucky, and the bucky is where you put your film or your digital collector, and that's attached to another mast, a column, and all of these elements are adjustable. When you're using them, you can move everything up and down and tilt them as you like, and those all need to be true, 90 degrees in each direction, and also the central ray of the x-ray needs to hit the collector and the bucky, the face of the bucky. So it's right in the middle of the collector and it's perpendicular to the collector, exactly. And to accomplish that, we have on top here a wire. And you can see this wire running across. It comes from a fastener on the top of one of the top horizontal on that end. It travels along and attaches to another fastener on the other end. That needs to be absolutely perpendicular, parallel with the tracks. And there's a track. I showed you the bottom track. Up here at the top of this column, there's the top track. And those two tracks have to be parallel, and they have to be oriented so that this column is vertical, and it remains vertical wherever you place it along this track. So if you slide your column up here, you put it back over here, it's vertical in all, front and back, front and side. So that's what we're up against. And then there's one other thing, is that when we position a patient, we use these things that are crudely called head clamps. I usually refrain from calling it that. Sometimes we joke and just say they're earmuffs or whatever, but we need to hold the patient's head in position to make sure it doesn't move out of position, because we are, like Dr. Goldberg was saying, we're measuring millimeters of misalignment or alignment. The difference could be really very critical. So that has to be centered in the middle, and in other words, in relation to that guy wire above, it has to be lined up with that perfectly, which means it's lined up with a central ray coming out of the x-ray tube, and the patient is then in the middle of the film, and then we can gauge whether their body is rotated or not rotated, whether their head is rotated or not rotated, because we have to take all of the rotation out of the patient positioning in order to get a correct x-ray analysis. So that's what we're up against right now. Now, just to give you a little advanced knowledge, we've done a little work so far. We've confirmed that the top and the bottom tracks are parallel. We know that, and we've also checked most of the vertical elements and horizontal elements and found that those 90-degree relationships exist, and that what we have is horizontal. The horizontal members are truly horizontal, and the vertical members are truly vertical. So that's where we're starting out. We're going to move on to the next step, and that is to get the machine's central ray in alignment with the wire that runs across the top.
While you're working on that, Doc, I got one more patient coming in right now. Work on her.
All right.
I'll rejoin you.
So this is the lead fishing line.
Okay.
And I'm going to fasten it onto the sensor so it's like this. And I think the best way to do that is to remove the sensor and put it down on the chair so we can get that and then put it back into the holder. And so we'll do that next. We're going to take some tape and fasten this wire. Now this is not a wire, I'm sorry, this is a fishing line. And I've never used anything like this before myself with my fishing, but here in Colorado, we do a lot of fly fishing, and all I can assume is that there must be some reason why you want to put a weight on your line so that it will go deeper in the water. It's all I can think. So, I think that I've never seen anybody put a weight on their fly. or use a weighted fly, but I suppose that might exist. Got a little kink in the fishing line here. But anyway, this might serve that purpose. And when I set up my original setup, I used this very line. So this is over 21 years old for me. And what Dr. Goldberg has done here is put some nails to create a central line on his machine. And it's very helpful when you're doing your x-ray analysis and you're confirming your patient positioning to have a vertical line like this. There you go. So that's in position. Now I'll just clip it with the scissors and we're ready to go. Okay, so now we can take this sensor and go ahead and place it in this bucky. Here we go. Good. All right. And yeah, there you go. So Dr. Goldberg is off treating a patient right now, so I'll be carrying on while he's doing that. Here we go. So that's that first part. And now the second part is to lay a line right down the middle of the bucky, if you want to be sure. We're going to place this right along the middle of the bucky here, just right there. Pull it nice and tight so we take any kinks out of it. All right.
So I've got my table set up in this next room. So I'm going to stand right here facing that wall.
Okay, so we have the lead fishing line on the middle of the sensor, and we've got one right on the middle of the bucky now. And we're ready to take our first alignment film to see that those two lines will superimpose. So we've set the central ray at horizontal and 40-inch focal film distance, and that means from the port of the tube to the image collector, the sensor. And what you see here is a really good overlapping of the lines that we just placed on the bucky and on the sensor. So let me see if I can get up here close and show you what that looks like. So you can see there, Dr. Goldberg's finger there for you, showing that we're right on the button with that. So that checks out. And so now, and this is the control room for the X-ray suite, and you can see it. There we are. There's our lead window looking out into the room. So coming back in here, then, next thing we want to do then is hang a lead line on the central ray line up here in the top here. So you see that wire running from side to side. We're orienting everything to that. So now what we're going to do is hang a wire, and Dr. Goldberg's a lot taller than I am. He can just reach up there, I think, and just do that for us. So you'll see that we're hooked up there, and we're going to move it about, maybe 5 inches from the front of the bucky, maybe 6, maybe a foot, doesn't really matter. Now, when you set up these plumb lines, one of the things you deal with is the things have, it becomes like a dowsing pendulum. So what happens is they have a tendency to move around a lot. And to stop that, to dampen that action, what I've done is I've brought in a cut off plastic jug. You'll see it down there. It has water in it, and the water acts as a dampener so that it can settle down and stay in place for us. There's a little bit of movement, so you can see a slight offset there. So probably what we're going to do then is just wait a minute more and take another one of these, see if that reproduces, and if it does, then we'll know that we need to make some kind of modification. Okay, so here we go. All right, so we're ready to take a look again in just a minute. Well, it looks pretty good. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, right on the center. This is okay. I just see a little separation there. That looks perfect. I couldn't get better than that.
Yeah, well, I left your nails on the sensor, so we're bumping over those a little bit.
Sure.
So it's not going to be completely, absolutely perfect where it does that.
Right.
But I didn't want to mess with your nails.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we're good. So we've just confirmed that. Now what we want to do is move on back out into the room here, into the exam room, and we want to hang another plumb line. So you can see here that we have 2 plumb lines now. They're separated by about 1.5 feet, and and then we still have the lines on the middle of the bucky and the middle of the sensor. And what we're going to do now is take an alignment X-ray and see what that looks like. So here we go. What we're looking at is that the one we just put down is to the right side of the midline of the bucky and the sensor. So if it's to the right side, what we probably need to assume then is that the point of fastening for the guy wire on the tube side, on the side opposite the bucky, is a little bit over to the right. So we want to adjust it just slightly from right to left. Okay, so we had to tighten up the fastener that holds the wire to the frame, and in the process we moved it a little bit. So now we're taking an image here, and we want to see where we are at this point. Still over to the right.
Maybe.
And it might have pulled another wire slightly over to the right, so we have to take it farther to the left.
Did that make it worse though? Did we not?
Yeah, made it a little worse. Yep. Okay, so we're back to the drawing board. We're going to make this adjustment now to bring it over. And what we're really concerned about here is the possibility of over-adjusting this thing. So we're up into the, so it's going to be hard for you to see this. Dr. Goldberg is up there playing around with this, and we're going to take it to the wall more. And so he's loosened up one side of the bolt, a nut on one side, and he's tightening up the other and fastening down, and there we are.
Okay.
And now you can imagine that there's a certain amount of drama here, waiting to see what comes out. Now our plumb bobs have been disturbed a little bit, so it'll take us a few moments to make sure they're stable before we try and shoot this alignment film again. So just putting my head over here and taking a look. Yeah, there's just a little bit of a sway going on in this other room. It's not much, but just enough so that it could give us a false impression here. Okay, so that should take care of it. So Dr. Goldberg will do the exposure now. So we're just moving it one thread on a bolt at a time, basically, and trying to bring this thing into a very fine-tuned state. And you can see just one thread bolt like that has almost completely solved our problem. If we do it one more, we'll probably be right on the line there. Very exciting. Yeah, we're very close. In fact, I'm sure some doctors would call this close enough. So back to the tightening phase. One more bolt thread over. There. Good. And now, I don't know if you can see this, but down here our wires are moving around, so I'm going to be trying to do a little bit of a manipulation on these wires to get them stabilized. This one is in pretty good shape. I think if you want to get this thing to be still, need somebody that's not shaky like me. I am really a shaky guy, I guess. Yeah. I guess I'm losing cerebellum function. But all you have to do is just barely nudge it and it goes crazy. Well, I'm just going to leave it alone. I think we're really close.
Yeah.
It's crazy. You can see this little twang still.
Yeah.
It's still going, but it's in pretty good shape now.
That's pretty good where it was.
Okay. Just a little bit. Okay. So the plumb lines are pretty stable. We're ready for our next image here. And so everybody take a look at this. This is what we mean by X-ray alignment, okay? So believe it or not, we have one more plumb line to draw. You see the difference between this and then the one we just did. That's beautiful. Okay, so we have one more to hang, and then we'll consider this part of the job completed. Now we have 3 plumb lines. You'll see them over here on the left, from the left, and then this one right in front of the mirror. And then we've got another one back here. And the tube is set all the way back as far, as close to the wall as we can get it. So now we're ready to check and do the final alignment check for the horizontal positioning of the tube. So the plumb lines are stable, and we're ready to take that exposure. Good. Well, folks, this is confirmation that we have found the central ray.
Let's do a comparison just so we can.
And that the middle of the bucky and the middle of the tube are lined up perfectly. And then the track is perfect. Everything is perfect in that view. So that's a really great accomplishment. Now the next thing that we have to do then is get the head clamps so that those are centered with this line. Now we have the head clamps in place, and we have a little, what we call an alignment barbell inside the head clamps. And on this barbell, there's the horizontal piece, the handle piece of the barbell. And if you look closely, you can see there's a little groove in the steel, and that groove is directly in the middle of the barbell. So now what we want to try and do is get that groove to line up with the plumb lines that, and all the lines that we've attached to the everything, the sensor, the bucky, and the 3 plumb lines. I want to see that those all superimpose. So we're going to go back on into the control room and take another do another X-ray of this and see what we get. So in our previous attempt, we got up to this point, and we got the barbell right on the midline. So let's see where we are. Well, we're so close that it's really, yeah, it shows that the barbell is slightly to the left by the equivalent of one thread up on the guy wire. So that means it has to go over. Now right now what we have is the barbell has been leveled, and so that's been accomplished. And so what we need to do is, without creating any rotation, just slide it over, like a millimeter to the right. You'll see on the back side of the bucky where the head clamps are attached, and Dr. Goldberg is loosening up the bolts that hold the head clamps onto the bucky, and we're going to try and move the whole assembly as it is now without creating any rotation, just a millimeter, and we want to move it to the right. So that's what we're trying to accomplish here. And the weight of the head clamps, is pulling the head clamps forward, so it's putting some torque on those bolts, and it makes it hard to do the adjustment. So what we're going to do is I'm going to move to the front and try and hold the front side of the clamps so that Dr. Goldberg can make that movement, just a very easy movement. So let me just go ahead and take some stress off of this. And we just need another loosening here, huh?
So I tighten that up. I got the movement as soon as you came over.
Oh, you already got the
Yep.
movement. Okay, well,
Let's
that's
see
what 1 millimeter of movement looks like.
Yeah, it is.
You can't see it.
I
So
might
now-
have gone too much. That's how small it is.
Yeah,
Let's just kind of make sure I didn't tilt it at all.
so we're checking the level of the barbell now. All right.
So using a different.
Yeah.
It should be the same, but now it looks a little bit off.
We have two of those leveling instruments, these inclinometers to use.
Now it looks like this side might need to go up, but maybe we just take an X-ray and just see what it looks like.
Yeah,
Just like, maybe a degree.
it looks pretty level to me. Let's go ahead and shoot one and see what we get. It's interesting how with this new technology you get an image in 10 seconds. In the old days we had to wait over 90 seconds. Wow, can you see that, everybody? That is beautiful. You'll notice that line just fills that little slot in the middle of the barbell handle just perfectly. So now if this was all that we have to do, we would be in good shape. But unfortunately it's not, because now what we have to do is tilt the bucky 20 to 30 degrees and move the head clamps just a little bit to the normal position that we would use it on what we call the vertex x-ray view. And then we have to do these alignment checks again and see if that holds together. And that will determine how much rotation there's been in the head clamps, and it might also reveal something that's a problem with the alignment of the actual bucky itself. So we're going to go there now. Now we have the plumb lines in place, and we've tilted the Bucky 20 degrees, and the X-ray tube is tilted about 45 degrees to show what the alignment is going to be in the vertex X-ray position. So now I eyeballed the plumb lines, and when I looked at them, they looked like the barbell was just a millimeter to the right of the patient's right. So we'll have to take a look now and see what it actually is on the alignment X-ray. So we're going to move back in here to the control room and go ahead and take that and see what we get. Wow. That is, wow.
Pretty good.
It is just amazing. Just really amazing. Look at that. You can see a tiny amount of slot space to the right in the current one. Just a hair. So then we're in a position now where we want to figure out if we want to try and adjust for that and risk making it even worse or to leave it like it is. But that is really, that kind of alignment will not make any error on X-ray analysis. That's within,
It's probably less than a millimeter.
it's probably, it's less than a half a millimeter. It's within, what I would say is it's within normal limits. But it's really a close call. I mean, you'd kind of like it to be absolutely perfect. You can see the nail is just a little bit over to the left in the slot, you know, on the left edge of the slot. And so if we were to move it from that position just a half a millimeter to the left, we might be able to resolve that and then do another X-ray from horizontal and see what we get. But I mean, the actual action of moving it could create more of a misalignment than leaving it alone would. So the question now is, what do we want to do? So we're back. It's been a couple of days, and we sent the X-rays of the alignment that we had achieved so far to the man who is writing the new chapter for the National Upper Cervical Chiropractic Association textbook on X-ray. And so he wrote back and said that we had done a really good job, that our alignment was great. And so we decided to proceed to the next step of the alignment process. And if you remember now, we have a line on the sensor that's right in the middle, a line on the Bucky, and 3 plumb lines in sequence that overlap the groove in the barbell. Now the next challenge is to get everything to line up with this piece of metal right here, which is called the glabella bar. And the glabella bar needs to be right in the middle in alignment with all of the lines and the groove, because that, in the X-ray procedure that we use, is brought down into the front of the patient, and it's supposed to be right in the middle of the glabella, which is this smooth, flat spot right between your eyebrows and your, you know, right in the middle between your eyes and your right above the nose. And so that has to be perfectly in alignment. So when we checked it, what we found was that it was a little bit deviated over to the patient's right side. The patient would be sitting in the direction that I'm facing you. So it would be pushed over this way. So we loosened up these bolts right here and eyeballed it back into alignment with the 3 alignment lines and the center of the bucky. So we've done that now, and we're going to take an x-ray now and see how that turns out. So now we're back in the control room with Dr. Goldberg, and he's going to take this exposure now. So we'll get this image and be able to see if the glabella lines up with the center of the barbell. So at the tip of the glabella bar is that little ball. And can you see that that's right on the line? And you really can't tell that anything falls outside of that line. Now, we might have moved it over too far.
We close that gap, that little.
The gap in the.
And the most inferior part of it is
that's
still a little bit
right.
to the right. So I think I would fix both at the same time.
Okay.
Like the smallest smidge.
So what we're going to do is smidge it over to the patient's left, just a very tiny amount. And we know it's left for the patient because there's the right marker right there. So here we go. All right, well, that's as good as it gets. That's pretty extraordinary. Yes, well, good job. We got that straight. Now, the last thing we have to do then is to tilt the bucky and tilt the tube and come down on this at an angle from the ceiling, in the direction of the ceiling, and take the view with all of these things in place and see that they line up in what we call the vertex x-ray position. So while Dr. Goldberg has gone in to treat another patient, we have angled this bucky 20 degrees, and then we've angled the tube 20 degrees. We're going to line the tube up so that it's right in the middle of the film of the sensor. We have pulled the head clamps just a little bit away farther toward the tube, and we've set this glabella bar down. And when we set it down, we eyeballed it, and we saw that it was a little bit off to one side. So then we loosened it up here and brought it back into alignment. And we also tightened up all of these little screws that hold the bar. And so now we should be able to check and take an x-ray and check and see what we have accomplished now. Okay, so we've achieved a perfect alignment in the vertex view. Let me show you that. Can you see how all the lines are lined up with the glabella and the center of the barbell? So we've really done it this time. So now we're going to go back and replace everything back in the horizontal position with the bucky straight up and down, and take another one of these and confirm that the adjustment of the glabella bar did not interfere with the alignment in the horizontal plane. Good. Well, that's very beautiful. Here you can see that the lines superimposed with all the lines superimposed with the glabella bar and the barbell. It's all really beautiful. So we've accomplished our alignment. We've done the job. So that's really very fine. Folks, we've done it. We did it right. We aligned the central line that runs across the top here, and then we lined up the head clamps. We lined up the glabella bar, and then what we have now is 4 what we call alignment images. One of them is showing that the center of the sensor and the center of the bucky are the same. which is really good, and that they line up with the central line. We hung 3 plumb lines along the line and took an image, took an exposure from all the way as far back as the tube could go, and got all of those lines to superimpose just perfectly. Then we added the head clamp alignment, which is the barbell, and we added the glabella bar, and we got that lined up in the taken from the horizontal position, and also with the tube tilted and the bucky tilted and the glabella bar brought down over the head clamps, pulled farther away from the bucky itself. All of that's lined up, and not only that, but then after we did a little adjustment on the glabella bar, we then returned everything to the bucky to vertical, the tube to horizontal, and took another image to confirm that the alignment of everything was still the same, and it was. So as far as we're concerned, we did a perfect job.
Yeah.
And now those, we just emailed them off to Dr. Zabelin. He is a seasoned old-timer NUCCA doctor in San Francisco. So if anybody's interested in getting excellent NUCCA care out there, you can contact Dr. Michael Zabelin, Zabelin, and I'm sure he'd be very happy to help you. We think we've done our job for getting started with what we call Level 1 certification in the NUCCA program, and we'll be doing some more X-ray work for that, sending in some more images, and then once we've completed those requirements, then Dr. Goldberg will be taking a written exam, and of course he'll pass that because he's a really smart guy. Awesome. And then we'll have this office Level 1 certified, and that's just going to be really great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I appreciate you, Doc, taking so much time to work on this. For the past 2 years since I opened this practice, I thought this thing was perfectly aligned. And although it wasn't far off, it just shows you how precise we've gone. And like you said, we really haven't cut any corners, and we can really feel very confident that we're taking the gold standard of X-ray on the CCCA.
In my opinion, you can't get any better than this.
Yeah.
Okay, so we did a great job on this, and we had great equipment to work with. So,
made it easy.
And that really made it much easier. And so it's been a pleasure doing this. And in my experience working in the field of upper cervical chiropractic and working with the NUCCA organization, the National Upper Cervical Chiropractic Association, I had a mentor. And he did wonderful things for me out of the goodness of his heart. So, I have a moral obligation to pass that on. So you get to be the recipient of that, and you're helping me with that karma.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
It's been great.
It has been. Thank you.
And thanks for watching this video.